In this video, we're going to look at just how crucial and critical prospecting actually is to fill your pipeline. Hi, it's Matt Elwell of the Elite Closing Academy, and in this video we're going to look at how critical prospecting is to fill up your pipeline so that you can make some sales a little bit later on down the line. And during this video, I'm going to clear something up. For salespeople, this is a problem. And let me tell you about the problem. The problem is lots and lots of people struggle to differentiate between a cold lead, a warm lead, a hot lead. When should I be serving? When should I be selling? And when should I close the lead? You know, what's the right thing to do? So let me show you exactly the scale of a pipeline. If you see it as the very first time a prospect comes into your pipeline to the time they actually make a purchase. And before I can really go into this training, I think one of the most important things you can do is, what is your data on this? Find out, go through our records, look at your computer, your CRM, look at any details that you've got, payments. How long in general do people take from the moment they first meet you, read a book about you, click on a link about you, hear you speak on a stage, hit some marketing, see something on Facebook? From the first time they see you, how long does it take them to become a paying customer? Now, there is a universal process for this, and most people take around about 12 steps. We actually call them contacts before they actually become a purchaser or a buyer. And actually between 1 and 5 is the time when I believe you should be doing the most of your prospecting. This is where you're nurturing, you're giving enormous value. This is where serving lives. This is where you should be serving people at a very, very high level. So lots of information, position your price, give really good content, give great value. And as the journey begins, you start to get to a point where people are ready to buy after 5 contacts. The next part is very much round about understanding them. So again, it can take time to really understand what your prospect needs, really understand what pains they've got, what results or impact those pains are having on their results. And this is a place where you've got to sell, and you sell by asking hard, high quality questions. And this is where people become warm prospects, okay? This is where people understand you already. They know you, you know a bit about them. And this is where closing starts. Now, a lot of people try and take a cold lead up here and close it using persuasion before you've understood, before they really realise who you are, what your business stands for. So it's really important that you understand a process that works for you and your business. But the first bit is very much about qualification. It's very much about prospecting, asking lots of questions, giving lots and lots and lots of value. And then you start to get to a point where the prospect becomes warm. There's more trust between you. And that's where you can get into a point where you come to the last bit, which is all about us. This is where the close lives. Now, understanding this process is absolutely critical. And taking somebody who's a very cold lead all the way through to this bit here, where they're a hot, qualified lead. What does that mean? It means you understand them. You know what their pains are. You know what the results of it. As a result of having the pain, what's actually going wrong. You know what needs to be put right. And they now see you as a solution to the problem. They know your prices. They understand the products that you've got that solve the problems that they've said they've got. And this is where you get into a hot qualified lead. I have a strategy called Open with a Close, which is a 12-point system that you use at this point. The success rate is enormous. And the first thing you've got to understand is taking your prospect through a journey to get them to the moment where they are a hot qualified lead ready for you to close. In this video, we're going to cover a question that we hear a lot. How do I prospect without being pushy? So many people ask us all the time when they come up to the training centre, how do I prospect and not come across as being pushy? And it is a great question, and I'll be honest, it actually has a very simple answer. Selling is about asking questions, not about telling. To be a great prospector, the first thing you've got to have is a lot of clarity and certainty around what it is that you actually do for people. When you're in service, when you're finding out what people need, that's when you can ask away with as much freedom as you want, really. And we want total freedom when we're selling. You don't want to be sort of in a box or cocooned or feeling like you got to be something you're not. Great sales is about being yourself. It's about asking amazing questions and deciding before making a written proposal whether or not you're a good match, and that's really important. So the way you avoid being pushy is to have certainty around what you do. That's the first thing, so that when you're asking, not telling, when you're asking, which is how you sell, you're prepared to go to places other salespeople won't go. And here's the reason why. If you're a salesperson that tells people and pushes and you're a little bit classed as hard selling, you will nearly always have to use, as a teller, presumption and assumption, because you never actually find out. You don't ask what they're thinking. You presume to know or assume that you know what's going on inside, and that's a dangerous place to be. That's actually where rigor mortis lives. If you presume and assume, you're dead. You're dead in the water as a salesperson. So that's when it becomes a problem, where people are assuming and presuming and talking over you. That's where you start to feel they're being pushy and too persistent, and that's where you want to push them away and you make excuses like, do you know what, I'm interested, but not right now, I'll ring you back tonight, or pop it on an email and we'll speak about it next week, or something like that. That's generally code for back off, leave me alone, it's not for me, here's another one, I'm busy, or I'm not interested. If you're hearing that, then you've got to look at yourself. How much telling were you doing? And critically, how many times did you ask questions? So to be a great prospector, you need 6 words in your life. That's all you need. And they're called 5 W's and 1 H. What, when, how, who, which, and where. When you ask questions that start with those 6 words before a written proposal, when you're selling, you will see an enormous difference in your results. By gathering helpful information, you and your team will be able to decide when to stop selling, make a written proposal, and then transition into closing the deal out. Prospecting is this side of the line: selling, asking, understanding. And those 6 words, what, when, how, who, which, and where, are the words that should begin each question that you ask. Here's the reason why. There's 3 aspects to a human being's brain. Ancient part of the brain, where yes and no lives. When you ask a question that doesn't start with one of those 6, you'll fire up an ancient part of the brain that has yes or no in it. And where yes or no lives, the conversation ends very quickly. Are you interested in having a look at what our products and services could do for you? Yeah, but I'm busy, pop it on an email. If you're hearing that, you're asking bad questions, and you need to ask one of those 6. They fire up logic and emotional aspects in the brain and allow the prospect to answer of their own accord with information that's helpful for you both to decide what should happen next or not at all. Let me give you a couple examples of really powerful questions. What have you seen in my product or service that when implemented in your business would accelerate a result or solve a problem? That's how you sell. That's how you sell before a written proposal, asking a powerful question like that. And you will find that with each one of those 6 words, and you should get a pen and paper out right now and say, how many times are we asking questions where the prospect has to actually go, great question, let me have a think about it? How many times do you actually do that? The best way to do it is to rate yourself out of 10. 10 being, every time you ask a question in the sales process, you're asking something that starts with a 5W or a H question. And one is you're constantly asking leading questions that bring no into play. Are you interested? Would you like to see how this works? If you're asking questions that bring no into play, you're a 1 out of 10. So where are you on the scale? Anything lower than an 8, strongly advise that you write what, when, how, who, which and where. Put it in front of your screen. You'd be amazed at the power it has on results, the impact it has on results. And here's the reason why. When your prospect is choosing, you're in control. That's how you sell. When you're asking powerful questions that they have to think about and answer of their own accord, that's when you're actually controlling the sale. That's really, really, really important. So just remember, if you want to make a difference today, ask questions that start with 5 W's and a H. What, when, how, who, which and where. Stop speaking, listen to the answers, and then you can decide from the information given whether or not you believe that your product or service, whatever it is you sell, would get them an even better result, move them from A to B, solve a problem, and that's when you can stop selling and start closing. On this video, I'm going to cover a subject that comes up all the time, prospecting. And there are 4 outcomes when you're prospecting that we're going to talk about. And it is critical that you and your team master prospecting. Let me tell you about the Elite Closing Academy's version of a prospecting journey. Before I do, I think it's really important to make something massively, massively clear. There is an enormous difference between serving, selling, prospecting and closing. So the prospecting journey, and the best way for me to describe the sales cycle, the journey, is, I call it KEB, caterpillar egg to beautiful butterfly. So imagine a tiny little caterpillar egg. Imagine the time it takes to go from that tiny little egg into a little caterpillar that then all of a sudden ends up in like one of those little cocoons that eventually turns into the most beautiful butterfly that can go out, which is somebody that buys your product and pollinates in the world. So you have to understand, what is your cycle? How long on average does it take a cold lead to come in at this end, little egg? How long does it take on average for it to fly away as a beautiful butterfly and pollinate as a paying customer? So that's data that you really need. There's a couple of other things that I think are really important. And the first thing that you should know is, across the globe, it takes a minimum of 5 contact points for a cold little caterpillar egg, a cold lead that comes in at the front. Minimum of 5 contact points along the prospecting journey before you've earned the right, before it understands you enough, before you've given it enough love and nurturing information for it to become a paying customer. So a minimum of 5 contacts. And the sweet spot's between 5 and 12. So firstly, now you know that, it's interesting information, ask yourself this question: what are we doing for the first initial contacts? What happens in those contacts? How much value do we give? More importantly, how much do we understand the prospect? So that's the first thing you've really got to get your head around. Get the data on what your journey is right here, right now. So when you're prospecting, there are 4 key outcomes. And the first outcome whenever you're prospecting is you should always look for an obvious client, somebody who definitely needs you right now. An example is, I mentioned it in previous videos. If I walk out of this building now and I'm suddenly, something falls on me, like I have a terrible accident, break my leg, like I've got a pain, and they take me off in an ambulance and the surgeon's there and he says, we can mend your leg. It's a bad break. I've got to tell you the bad news, it's a really bad break. By the way, if we don't mend it, I'm not sure you're going to survive. I'm like, okay, just get it done. Bad news is the NHS has gone bust this morning. It's going to cost you £1 million. What am I going to do? Even if I haven't got £1 million, like I've got a real problem on my hands, so I've got to find the money. That's the first thing. So you should always look for someone who's desperately in need of what your product or service sold. So the first thing you must do is listen out for obvious pain. You know, another analogy is this, a great white shark, an apex predator. It's swimming along one day and there's a dead whale on the surface, and it goes up to the top and it just eats, it gorges itself on whale meat. And it's for 3 days, it hasn't got to hunt anything, it's just got to eat meat. It eats and eats and eats to the point it's like, I can't eat anymore. And it starts to swim down to the bottom because it's going to go and digest and chill out. And on the way down, a mackerel comes swimming, a little tiny mackerel comes swimming straight towards it. It's full, it's not hungry. What do you think it does? Opens its mouth and eats it. Because its instinct is to eat. Now, I'm not saying elite closers need to be like a great white shark, of course I'm not. But what I am saying is, we should be on the lookout all the time for a meal if we're an apex predator. If somebody really needs what we do, we should not put obstacles in the way. We must be aware that if someone really needs us, then it can happen quickly as long as they have a strong reason to buy your product or service. So point number 1 when you're prospecting is obviously look for a yes. Don't push for a yes, just be aware that sometimes people are ready to buy straight away. Number 2 is, if it's early on, particularly like before the 5th contact in this part here, then you've got to be prepared for them saying, look, it was really nice to meet, I've been great talking about your products and services and how it might possibly help me. I need some more information, what's the logical next step? So you've got to have a second step, a sort of, okay, of course I'm going to send you some more information, but critically, you have to decide in your prospecting journey what that looks like, and more importantly, you must control what happens next. So you don't really want to leave it so that they have to get back to you. If there is a qualified interest at some point, then I think it's important, I know it's important that there is a logical next step, and it's up to you, the salesperson, to give them data or information and then find out when in the future, even though it doesn't exist, that data or information is going to be of interest to them. When is your product or service required by that business? Now, you only get to find that out by asking powerful questions. That's a big part of it. So point number 2 is to give them more data, serve them, give them information, and have a logical next step, another action along the journey. It's really important. Number 3 is where somebody says to you, look, actually it was really nice to meet you. I'm going to tell you right now, although I've got a small interest in what you do, it's not something we're really contemplating at the moment. We don't really have any obvious pains. And I think this is a really important part of keeping your pipeline clean. I use this question, I go, well, firstly, thank you for being so honest. Let me ask you a question. How would you prefer my team to communicate with you and your team moving forwards, or not at all? So I do give people an option actually at this stage. And if they say not at all, I go, no problem at all. I'll take you off the list. Before I do, who do you know right now in your social circle who does need what we do, or might possibly need what we do moving forwards? So I'm still going to look for a referral. If they say, actually, yeah, we'll stay in your community, I'll go, and how would you prefer us to communicate? Email, Facebook? Definitely you're looking to get them into your community, to capture their information, so you can email, promote, stay in touch, serve, nurture, whatever it is that works for your business. So that's number 3. Keep them in the community, get a referral, or cut them loose. If you're a tuna fish fisherman and you catch a mackerel, you got to toss the mackerel out. You're after tuna fish. So at the end of the day, this is an opportunity to clean up your pipeline. And when your team do this, by the way, and do it well, what happens is you get a massively qualified base, which is really powerful. Moving forward, you create your own little mini economy, really, you know, with your perfect customers, just all at different stages along the prospecting journey. And they pop out as beautiful butterflies ready to go out and pollinate every so often. And the more qualified leads you've got in your pipeline, the more prospecting you do, the more beautiful butterflies. The more little eggs you lay, the more little beautiful butterflies will come out at the other end and pollinate and be the perfect customer. So a beautiful, perfect customer. So that's number 3. And then number 4 is a terrible thing, and the best way for me to say it is F off and die, or fuck off and die, which is a horrible thing to say. It does happen in sales once in a while. People just, it doesn't work, you don't like each other. It's very rare. I'm sure if you're watching this, it's never happened to you, it couldn't possibly happen to you. Well, it's happened to me over the years many, many times, and actually it's a very good outcome to learn at the beginning of the journey that you're not a good match, that they're not a tuna fish, they're a mackerel, and you've got to toss them away. And you know what, I'll give you a little story. Recently, my business partner Nick James, the creator of Expert Empires, he and his team were filling an event up, and I jumped on the phone, keep my skills sharp, and made a phone call, and it did not go well, and the guy was pretty much like, look, I'm not interested. Phone went down, which we call an FOAD, and he did it in quite a rude way, to be honest. I was like, this is really rude. So all I did was I just sent him a text and said, sorry we got cut off. Check out our free, I think it's a website, I can't even remember, the expertempires.co.uk. Check it out for free. Now, did he check it out? I don't really care, but he might have done. And I felt great because I know that, look, he's a knock off and die, unsubscribe, see you later. If he checks us out, great. If he doesn't, I'm over it. It's actually a really good result, and it keeps your pipeline clean. You don't want people that you're not going to do business with receiving great data, and your time, your team's time, your money, your energy, your spiritual energy, and your effort. You don't want mackerel if you're a tuna fisherman. Those are the 4 outcomes of prospecting along the prospecting journey. And just remember this, when you understand your prospects, when you've followed this process, there needs to be an exchange, a close. You're my perfect customer. That's when you've got to stop prospecting. It's when you've got to stop selling, and that's when you need to close the deal. Hi, in this video, we're going to look at how to start a conversation in sales. Today, we're going to look at a beautiful little word, it's only 2 letters, that when utilised, starts amazing sales conversations. So the little word, get your pen and paper out, is the little word called if. And what is amazing about if is that it's pretend. When you go into the if world, it's pretend, and you fire up a part of the human being's brain where recollection lives, where imagination is, where visualization lives. And by the way, as a salesperson, you must have this in your locker. What I love about if as well, you have to challenge yourself to come up with some great if questions. So you're stretching your thinking. And by the way, salespeople, it takes 12 hours to go rusty. And actually, the truth is, international class sales requires you to stretch your thinking, to be able to open your prospects' thinking to what might possibly happen in the future. So let's look at some if questions, and let's look at how immediately if takes you into a pretend world. If I could show you a way to increase your sales conversions, and in particular to close more deals, what's the first thing we'd need to talk about? That is an example of how if can open your prospects' thinking to a point where when they answer the question, they will hit on their problem, their challenge that's linked to what you do. Think about the question. If there was a way that I could show you how to improve your sales and increase closing deals, what's the first thing that we'd need to talk about to make it happen? That is so powerful. And again, I want to challenge you right now. If you've got a team, or if you're a salesperson on your own, how often do you ask a question that fires up imagination, that when answered links you to being a possible solution to a problem that they may or may not have in a pretend world where if lives? If is really powerful place to be. If we could involve the world's greatest XYZ, who would we need to involve to solve a problem for you or to get an even better result with your XYZ. Again, all the time you're looking to ask questions that open up the imagination of your prospect and allow them to really challenge internally what they think they actually need to solve the problem that they've got. There's a very, 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 very powerful aspect to prospecting, to having closing questions, to your sales process. If is a part of the brain where the future actually doesn't exist and it opens up imagination. So I'm going to challenge you right now. How many if questions can you and your team ask right now? And look, a great way to do this is to role play. Like I've just done with you, I've just given you 2 if questions. If there was one thing right now that me and you needed to talk about in your sales process that when answered got you an even better result and increased conversions, what would it be? You see how that question is totally and utterly how you should sell. When you're asking really powerful questions and your prospect is in choice, so they have to choose how they answer it, that's when you're controlling the sale. And that's why this particular video, when mastered in your sales team, will create so many opportunities, will create so much information that's helpful to you in your sales process. It's actually unbelievable. If is the key question. Write it down. How many questions can you ask that start with if in your sales process? If you enjoyed that video about the power of if questions, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you've got a team, make sure they subscribe too. Crucially, ping the notification bell so you can get all the free training and check out all the other videos. Thank you.